initially, I tried to do shaping in the team because I kind of have both technical art background. I've run business before. So even though I kind of had all the skills necessary, it was still not enough. Like I remember I shaped some features which were like, oh, but that's actually not possible to implement it in this way because of like the way, I don't know, something on the backend works, which is like deep code buried somewhere, like which I have no idea about. So it's not that you cannot do it alone and then ask for feedback. I just think it's just way easier to involve the whole team, and as we discussed, more pleasant. And yeah, I'll just try it this way instead of like trying to go the solo type of shaping work.
Welcome to Shapers and Builders, the show about better ways to deliver great software products. Today I'm speaking with Marin Petrov, who's part of Camplight, a collective of people working together on software projects and products. Within Camplight, Marin and his team are working on Assista, a Trello powerup for better time tracking. This conversation is part of a series about companies that use ShapeUp, a delivery framework originally created at Basecamp. If you've never heard of ShapeUp, check the show notes for a link to the video Shaping in a Nutshell by Ryan Singer, former head of strategy at Basecamp and author of the book ShapeUp, Stop Running in Circles and Ship Work That Matters. In our conversation, Marin explains why ShapeUp felt like such a natural fit for the team working on Assista and how it gave them great language to activities like shaping. It was fascinating for me to learn about Camplight's setup as a collective, a way of working together that feels like an indie hacker but together kind of approach. Enjoy! Hi, Marin. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks. It's a pleasure.
I'm really excited to talk to you today because you have a bit of a special situation in the way you work and the way the company that you work at is structured, right? So I would love to actually start there, and maybe you can talk us a bit through what you do. I know you are part of Camplight, which is kind of a collective of people, and you have various products and services. And maybe you can just talk us through the background of that and also your role and how you got into Camplight and Assista that you work on now.
Yeah, sure. So Camplight is a software company. Like we are basically making software, but it might be a little different on two fronts. The one thing, or the main thing really, is that we're a cooperative, which means every member of the company is also a shareholder or an owner of that company. So yeah, the first thing is, shared ownership, legally even. And the next thing is we also use what we call participatory decision making. Basically, we decide together how the company will go forward, or like the governance of the company is also shared between us. So these are the two main things. Some people refer to this shared governance as self-management. I really don't like this term because it's a little bit overloaded and people have different ideas of what it might mean. In general, it means that we are all leaders in our roles and we try to steer the company together. So yeah, these are the two main differences, I would say. And
how many people are there on the team and within the company?
Yeah, so Camplight right now, I think we're 22, I believe, people. We're slowly growing, but we're very careful with that. The company existed for 11 years now. We had our 11th birthday celebrated last week. And
Congrats.
thanks. And I joined the company 2 years ago, so I'm one of the new guys there. And so we also work on, actually, maybe I'll say a little bit about the business model. It's kind of like an agency work. We do a lot of projects with different clients that basically need their software systems built. And it can be anything from web to mobile to any kind of application, really. And then from few years ago, we also started thinking about our own products, and we do that in two different ways. Like sometimes we build ventures together with our partners, where we have also ownership on those ventures, and we also have a few of our own products which we develop, and I'm basically on a team that builds these internal products, one of which is called Assista. It's a time tracking software for Trello. And yeah, they're basically small. Like, don't think of something big or complex, but we want to slowly kind of grow into more product-based company, I would say.
Got it. And then the people that work, you mentioned you have this agency stream of work, and then you have the internal products that you try to build. How are people kind of staffed between the two things?
Yeah, so most of us work on like this agency type of projects, and maybe me, like actually me and another engineer working on Assista are full-time focusing on our product. So majority is still working on the agency type of work, and small team is slowly growing around our products. And then people are sometimes helping. So for example, in Assista, we are 4 people. I'm a product person, you could say. Then we have 2 engineers and a designer we collaborate with, and also a marketing person. So yeah, 4 or 5 people team. It's not big. It's actually quite small compared to what I've been used in before, but yeah.
And those people, how do they balance their time between project work and agency work, and then internal product work?
Yeah, so one thing we tried to do and are doing now, since I joined, I believe, is like income comes from these external projects, let's say, and then we're also working on these internal products, and then part of this income stream goes into funding those. So it's in effect like people or members of the cooperative are also investors in our own products. Like, we decide which one should get a priority, which one we should focus on. But we also try to have a dedicated team working on those. Like, we tried before to kind of do it on the side. Like, it never actually works. So now with this business model where we have a funding going actively into the products, it's easier, I believe. And we try to actively put people focusing on it. So yeah, having full-time focus on anything, I think, is important. So yeah, we try to stay focused on those.
Yeah. I hope you don't mind that I drill down on this model, but I find it pretty fascinating for a lot of people who are probably kind of fond of the indie lifestyle and way of working. So when you mentioned, you've switched now to mindset where you actively think of funding these internal products. How do I have to imagine that? Is it literally in a way that you kind of set up a business plan and have certain goals where you say, until this point, we want to have this product be self-sustained, or is it more a loose mindset? How does that work?
Yeah, I don't believe in business models too much. It's more of a, you could say agile type of thing. Like some ideas are born really in a weekend. For example, one project we have right now is called Team GPT, where people can collaborate on a chat GPT type of interaction with OpenAI. But yeah, this was just born in a week, I believe, and now it's growing. So it's more of a, let's try something fast. If it works, then we continue developing it. If not, then we kill it. There are many ideas that didn't work, actually. But I think that's just the nature of it. And I think the idea is to just really focus on what works and try things fast, fail fast in a way. And usually that's what we do. We have an idea, we build something around it. Nowadays, at least, that's easy to do with modern architecture. You can really spin something really fast. And so we don't really have business plans around those. It's trial and error in a way. But then once it starts, well, then we kind of think about more from the business side. Like, for example, Assista is now, 2 years old project, even 3 maybe. And it's growing, so we have to constantly think about, okay, how do we spend our money, where, and maybe that's why we also use ShapeUp in that regard, because it fits us naturally. I don't know if that explains it,
definitely.
But we try to be more agile at the beginning, but then kind of be more streamlined later on. Once
the project itself, so Assista as the product, is it, if you don't mind me asking, is it kind of self-sustained yet, or are you still funding it in a way?
We are kind of on the edge, I would say. It's self-sustained, and but we also put some money into it because we want to grow it in different ways, actually. But right now it's kind of starting to generate more than we actually put in it, I would say. So yeah.
Nice. That's where you want to be. Cool. And to kind of wrap up this intro section, I guess, in a way, you yourself, you have a bit of an interesting background, I think, or not the typical product background, right? Do you want to talk a minute about that?
Yeah, actually, that's something I'm still trying to wrap my head around, like how that happened. So I come from 20 years of working in the film and animation industry. What I was doing there is my role was character technical director, which means if you've seen a movie like Ice Age, for example, maybe one of or few of the characters there were moving because me and my team allowed them to move.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a role which combines a lot of art and technology, which I enjoy a lot.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've been basically doing that forever, really. And I think in 2016 I decided to build my own company, which was a software for the animation industry. And then slowly got into building software and mostly SaaS and web applications and stuff like that. But like kind of looking from different perspective. Like it's still art and technology, but just in a different domain. I would say so.
Yeah.
Yeah, product work is very similar to what I used to do. It's just the domain is completely different in a way.
Interesting. I'd love to maybe circle back to that later in our conversation, but I just found it fascinating the transition and what similarities you might see between the two worlds, and you just kind of answered that.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I actually discovered you and Assista through the blog post that you wrote on how you work, and in it you mentioned kind of the way you've been inspired by ShapeUp.
Mm-hmm.
And as you kind of know, right now I'm trying to talk to a lot of teams that are using ShapeUp and understand their stories. So I'd love to hear your experience and your journey in adopting ShapeUp. How do you get in contact, in touch with it, and how did that evolve for you?
Yeah. So I joined Camplight. When was it? 2020, I believe. So the book was already out at that time. I've read it, and I think everyone in Camplight has also read it. Like part of our culture is we're like very curious, and we also like to dig in new stuff. So I think when the book came up, it was probably discussed inside Camplight. I wasn't there. But yeah, when we kind of formed a team around Assista, we like it kind of felt very naturally to use that. Like it's a process which combines business, design, engineering, marketing, everything in one's very, like it just fits in our workflow and in our culture as well. So it wasn't like, oh, let's start using ShapeUp. I think it was more like, we'll just use it. It's just common sense in a way. So maybe that's how it started. It's even like the words in the or the descriptions of like what we're already doing in a way, like the word shaping is such a great word to describe like this process which we do collaboratively to design or come up with a solution to a problem. So all that just fit our team very naturally, and we're using it right now. It's not exactly.
Were you?
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to ask: were you around at the time where the team was not using ShapeUp yet? And if so, kind of, can you contrast? Were there things bugging you before?
Yeah. So, not really. Like I wasn't there, but the thing is, I joined specifically so we could focus on our own products. Like before that, it was like a little bit of an ad hoc thing. Like, okay, we do these things, but not really because we don't have funding for them. So when I joined the team, we kind of transformed the business model to also allow for this like full focus on these products. and then it kind of happened. Like, it's okay, this is how we're gonna work, this is what processes we're gonna use, this is how we'll be shaping, and it just evolved naturally from there. It's still evolving.
Got
I mean,
it. So
yeah.
yeah. So, but it kind of the fact that you joined to focus full time on the product then meant that all of a sudden you had to set some kind of process and agree on some way of working in a way, even though it wasn't that strict as you mentioned, right?
Yeah, sure. That's kind of like what happened.
Got it. And then you mentioned how it kind of fit naturally with how you felt working made sense, but I think you wanted to touch a bit on also things that maybe you couldn't adapt one-to-one from the book, right?
Yeah. I mean, one thing is, like, we're a very small team. So this, for example, the 6 weeks cycles described are something we like. If we were a bigger team, I see how, very structured timeline around those cycles will work. I think we're more agile in that sense. Like, sometimes you could say a cycle is, let's ship these 2 features. One of them is big, the other is small. And then maybe the next cycle will be a little bit bigger. It's more fluid than that. Like, we don't have a strict kind of tempo around that. We still have, like, every quarter we have retrospections, and we also use OKRs. I know it's like people will hate me for saying it, but we like it. And we kind of look at those. We see how the business is going. We're just thinking about the next 3-4 months of what we should be focusing on. So it gives us some way of dealing with unpredictability in a way. Another thing, when I read the book, I really liked it, but like, something that was bugging me was the this idea of some people will do shaping work and some people will do other type of work. And I can see how this might work in teams where you have someone that is like combines engineering, design, and business type of thinking into one. And then maybe, yes, that person can do shaping work, but I don't know. Most teams I've worked at, that's a rare combination to have. So we usually do shaping together as a whole team. So we say, okay, we need to shape this feature. Let's sit down. We use Miro for that extensively, and we're just brainstorming there on the spot. And it's more like a mob programming type of action than actually one person doing it. So that's something we're doing differently, probably.
Yeah. And I think that's, I had the chance to talk to Ryan a few weeks ago, specifically about kind of changes to shape up over the course of time, or maybe misconceptions that he was correcting. And one of the things we talked about was this myth of the lonely genius shaper. And what he mentioned in that conversation was specifically around that being kind of an idiosyncrasy of how Basecamp worked, but not a design per se of the system shaper, that you had to have one person that's this genius shaper.
Exactly.
So I think it's completely fair to design this, and even desire to design this as a collaborative activity.
Yeah. I mean, it's also more fun, to be honest. It's so staying alone and just doing this, it's not we also work remotely, so we, in that effect, we're kind of very similar to maybe Basecamp. Like, we started that way and stayed that way, and it can get very lonely if you're working remotely. So, doing these
Yeah.
sessions is actually a very nice way to connect with people.
Maybe I don't know if this is gonna work, but maybe you can try to talk us through the past few cycles or projects that you've done, and
Mhm.
and kind of talk us through the sequence of work. When were you shaping? How were you overlaying the shaping work with the actual development work?
Yeah,
And how long were the projects? How did they get started and get finished, or
sure.
maybe
Yeah.
not?
Yeah. So just maybe last week we had some few shaping sessions. So we use Trello for our project management and Kanban a lot. Like we have a focus and an in progress column and then a done column, you could say. And
Mm-hmm.
in general, like we have few others, but whatever. So we move, cards from left to right. Once we start working on something, it stays in the in progress column, and then we move it out of there once we finish. So we this shaping type of uh, work that we do, yeah, we just have tasks for them. We call them shape this type of feature. For example, right now
Mm-hmm.
we're shaping something called a time boxing feature, where think of like if you have used time tracking software, you probably want to set some deadline or appetite or kind of a time box the how much time this feature or this task um, should be worked on. And so we're adding this in
Yeah.
Assista. And there are a lot of complexities around it. Like it sounds very simple, but because Assista is not the typical time tracking software, it's like adding a little complexities on top of that. So yeah, we just last week we sat down with. Actually, I started a mirror, like we start a mirror board around the shaping feature, and we just throw ideas there, like what will work. We always start with, okay, what's the problem, and what might be a
Mm-hmm.
potential solution. Um, we have to be very clear about the problem because that's usually where things can go wrong. And yeah, this is something which I've talked to many customers and they want it, but how they want it is a little bit different. So what kind of solution to have which fits all of them? So we're thinking about all this. Now I first started the board, so I put some stuff there, and then I gave it to the team to just review it offline. Like it wasn't a actual session where we stayed together. So they reviewed it. They
Mm-hmm.
gave me some comments. Then I improved some of the ideas we had. Then we had a session together, which we started improving it even more. And then something came out of it. So something you could say is a finished, shaped feature. And
And what
we
does that look like? Like, what's the
yeah,
artifact at the end?
the artifact is like exactly what's described in the book. Like we have a problem, solution, uh, and like all the rabbit holes you might get into, appetite for it. Uh, yeah, some
Do you also
stuff
use
that
a breadboard as
we
to
use
mock
Trello
flows,
to
or
describe all this in the basically in the cart of the task. We put it as a description and we say, okay, this is
uh
the actual thing we're building. That's what comes out of it. Like in this case, there are some mock-ups, like very loose type of hand drawings in a way.
yeah.
Yeah, so anyone that has read the book, it's like very, very similar to what's described there, which is very, very low fidelity type of thing, which describes the solution, but not in too much detail. And yeah, that's what it comes out of the session.
And then do you go into building right away? Like, do I have to imagine this as a just-in-time process where you shape something, you build it, you shape the next thing, you build that? Or is there more of we shape a few options and then we pick which one we actually want to pursue now? How does that work for you all?
It's more like that. We shape few things, but then we kind of prioritize when to start building them. And there are usually some features which are being shaped, some which are being worked on. So it's like an overlap. It's not we don't have a time for shaping or time for building. It's like we do both simultaneously. So we started implementing it this week. We've set an appetite for 1 week, so let's see if next week it will be ready.
I was gonna say, what's like a typical size for you? Because you mentioned you are a small team, you are kind of a nimble and agile in that way.
We also, one thing which we also do is we don't have a strict work schedule. Like everybody works like they decide basically. And we also use Assista to track our time internally of how much time we spend building on Assista. It's very meta.
It is kind of meta.
Yeah. So we set 1 week just because we think that's how much time it will take for everything until we ship it. No, it might go longer than that if people, let's say, go on vacation, like especially if we're a small team, that happens. And then, so it's not a 1 week of calendar 1 week, but like 1 week of work for us. And usually we're pretty good.
You have these other because you have these other commitments, right? So if I understand you correctly, the kind of the builder team that works with you, they are also busy on the agency type of work. So they have to split themselves even while a cycle is ongoing in a way?
One of our developers is full-time on Assista, so
you
usually they in that regard they're focused just on that. Our other developer is splitting time currently because there is like a big project we're working on outside of Assista. And I'm sometimes doing also design work, and we also collaborate with another designer. So if it's something like I cannot do, maybe they'll do it. But usually most of the design tasks I pick them up. So
when you say design task, is that front-end implementation or is that kind of Figma prototype?
I mean, both. Sometimes we can also implement something if it's easy enough, like HTML and CSS and JS, for example. But it's mostly like Figma design type of work where, okay, that's how the screen should look like.
Got it.
And even our full-time developer, like she is very knowledgeable about front-end stuff, so usually she'll just knock it off directly in code, probably. Sometimes it's easier than to design it and then
and then transfer it because you're already familiar with the medium, right? Hey, I hope you're enjoying the conversation. I wanted to take a moment to thank you for listening and to let you know about the Shapers and Builders job board. On shapers.builders, yes, that's the domain, you'll find jobs in software development, design, product management, and other roles at companies companies that work with ShapeUp. Many of these roles are remote, and teams who use ShapeUp generally run at a more sustainable, healthy, and meaningful pace than the hamster wheel of 2-week sprints. So if you're looking for a job in tech or trying to find great people, head over to the Shapers and Builders job board at shapers.builders. Now let's turn back to the conversation. Was that something you were looking for specifically when hiring that full-time developer to have them be full stack in a way?
No, but like I see a lot of benefit in that. Like even for designers to even be able to code, it's just so much easier than to design something, then hand it off to someone else to implement it. I just feel the more T-shaped you are in that regard, it's maybe better. So no, we don't try to actively do that, but it kind of naturally maybe happens. And maybe because we are a small team, so you have to wear different hats in that regard. So it's out of necessity in a way also.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I find fascinating what you said about the time being not calendar week, but kind of a team effort week, and that can play out over multiple calendar weeks in a way.
Yeah.
Is there yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, we kind of choose when to work. We also have families. Anything happens, children are sick at home. Like, I don't think you can. Like, it's also not healthy to say, okay, this is. We should be able to ship it in 1 week. Like, nobody's going to die. Like, for example, I hear your kid in the background. It's like these are stuff that happen, right? I mean, it's you cannot really predict it when something will be ready to be shipped, and we're usually good with that. Like when we set an appetite of like a few days or a week or a month, like we know that we'll be able to ship it until then, so we don't go over that. And that's what also shape up is good for, because you say exactly how much time you will wanna invest in it, because like before in other teams I've worked with the opposite concept of like oh, here is a nice feature that we want to build, and let's try to build it in that amount of time. But you either go over that time and your prediction is wrong, or you do something and sacrifice quality to be able to ship on time. So with ShapeUp, it's like, okay, this is how much time we invest, and we ship until then. No more, no less, kind of.
Yeah, when we spoke before, kind of, we did touch on that topic, right, about appetite being a good fit in a situation where you are also an owner of the company, whereas I think in a pure employee position, you might not care so much if you carry a project forward and forward and forward, sprint after sprint.
Yeah, that's very well said. Actually, we we are constantly like, are we sure we wanna invest even build, like actually building this thing? Like, is it so important? So in that regard, we're like even more careful, like how much time we put into the software, because you can go overboard with that. And if you are looking at it from a business perspective, like trying to make a profitable business, then of course it makes perfect sense that you'll be careful with how much you invest.
Yeah, I think that's a good time to kind of go a bit deeper on the how do you decide what you build next, and do you feel like this pressure as an owner, this pressure to be profitable, does that push you to have these rather small bets that you place one after the other, kind of rather 1 week long versus tying up the team for 4 weeks? How do you balance that, or how do you think about that?
Yeah. So we usually talk with users a lot. So we have a pretty good idea of what they're struggling with and like their pain points, I would say. At Camplight, we also use Assista extensively for our all our work actually. So we are also users of that. So that's actually a very nice thing to be able to use your own software in the at work, and that way we have a pretty good idea like what we're struggling with, what we want to build, how maybe. So how we prioritize is mostly from it's maybe both analytical and kind of art, in the sense like I'm kind of fan of a Zen and art of motorcycle riding, and they describe this idea of like looking at something both from analytical point of view and from artistic point of view, and it's both. Like you cannot analyze it only. You have to also feel like what needs to be done in a way. Like some people refer to it as a product feel, and so we're like trying to listen to users. We're trying to listen to ourselves, and we prioritize based on that. We just see what's the most painful, basically, and just focus on this to solve it first. Sometimes we see something that is not very obvious. Like now with AI, it's like, oh, there are so many rabbit holes there. So we're like, oh, maybe we should just build this with some AI features and stuff like that. But it's also a dangerous path to follow the hype in a way. So yeah, mostly listening is, I would say, the best skill for that. Like listening to your users, listening to your gut feeling, and that's how we prioritize, I would say.
And what was the biggest, in terms of time, biggest thing that you ever kind of shipped for Assista?
Oh man, there is this thing which is still biting us. So last year we were like, okay, it's kind of interesting why. So Assista is a power up for Trello. Like it integrates with Trello, and in Trello you have this notion of workspaces and team members. And all other power ups, we're like looking at them, and they're like basically billing you on the number of members you have in the workspace. But maybe only 20% of those people will use the power up. So you're like paying for your whole workspace, even though maybe just few people will use it. So we thought that's like not fair. We were like, okay, can we make Assista to be fairer in that regard, and you choose for which members to pay, right? Because fairness is one of our values, so how can we do that? And that was so hard to do. Like It's I mean, now we kind of see why nobody's doing it. We did it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's a feature we shipped, which took us way longer than like, once we started shaping it, we were like, wow, that's like actually a very deep thing. Like, do we actually want to
Mm-hmm.
invest time in this? So we saw it's complex, and but regardless of that, we're like, well, it's kind of against our values if we don't do it. Like, we have to do it. We also think it will be good in the long term. Like, if people see that we're fair with them, well, I think it's from longer term perspective, it makes more sense.
Mm.
And yeah, it's something that took us quite longer. There wasn't the immediate benefit that people probably saw. Like, I think it's a very long-term thing that people will appreciate.
Mm.
And it's also kind of weird because in a way we're losing revenue in that regard by implementing this in the short term
By doing the
only.
right thing in a way.
But yeah, I feel it's the right thing to do also. So
Interesting.
yeah,
So how long
that's
do you remember? Did you set an appetite on that project, and did you
yeah,
meet
I
that
remember it
appetite?
was like 2 months or something.
Wow.
It wasn't, yeah, because there had to be like a lot of screens we had to design. Like, it's not it wasn't a straightforward thing. Also, like, all the management of the users inside Trello, like what messages you give them when they are either using it or not using it, like that kind of restrictions. It's kind of a boring work, but yeah, a lot of complexities around that. And yeah, also the hard thing is, like, when you implement with third party software like that, it's always battle with, like, once they change their API, you have to support all kinds of crazy stuff happening there. So yeah,
Yeah. So that project is still giving you troubles, kind of.
it's yeah, I think now we kind of want to, like, actually another thing we're shaping right now is just improving that, because
Mm-hmm.
we shipped it, people were not clear like how it works exactly. So it works. It's just we're not clear in the messaging and, like, copies here and there. So we have to improve on that next. So yeah, that's actually another good thing about ShapeUp is, like, you can actually ship something which, well, it's not that polished. It works. See how it's perceived, and yeah, you can decide to invest a little bit more on top of that later on.
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting because I've saw some articles online about, like, how ShapeUp doesn't allow you to uh like, kind of judge how something will be perceived, but I kind of see that's exactly what's happening. Like, you're actually shipping something, you see how it's perceived, you can work on top of that later on. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I observe the same criticism of ShapeUp in that, in a way, I think it gets this label as being a bit of mini waterfalls, or a bit more waterfally, in a way that you do in the shaping, you do kind of upfront planning of how you're gonna develop this thing,
Mhm.
and I think that gets perceived as being waterfall like.
Yeah, I can see how that can be perceived, but maybe it's just how someone is maybe using it. Like, I actually think it's the opposite. It can be very agile in that sense. Like, uh, you can even ship something very half baked if you want to. Like, I wouldn't do it because it doesn't feel okay, but you can just ship something that's not ready. How would you call it? And
Mm-hmm.
then You can even measure how it's used if you want to, and then improve later on top of it.
Yeah, I agree. I have to agree from personal experience that I think ShapeUp just forces you to ship. It forces you to make trade-offs to ship, and then you observe, and then you have this stopping function of, okay, we're gonna put this out in the world, and then maybe we work on something else for a cycle
Mm-hmm.
while we observe how it's kind of used, and then we can come back to it. Whereas in a Scrum setting, I've seen teams just keep treading water on the same thing because it's never ready enough.
Yeah,
And then you don't stop and observe and step back and give it time to be kind of used in the market.
exactly.
Interesting. So the 2 months, is that was that a one-off for you? Like, you're not going to have any 2-month projects in the foreseeable future, or?
No, I don't know. Maybe we will. Right now the product is very, like, it's very mature. I would say it's not a. I just don't see much like what we can build so much on top of it that will probably take a lot of time. We might focus on another product, probably, is my bet, than actually invest more long term, like building features on top of it. Because at the end of the day, it's a small project. The idea for it was like, I mean, it will never be a $1 million product. It's just something that will give us revenue on top of what we're doing anyway.
Interesting. So is that rather the strategy is to have like a portfolio of
Yeah,
these
yeah,
smaller products, niche
yeah.
products?
For us, I've seen this works maybe at this stage a little better. Like building fast, trying something. If it works, then we stick and try to bring it for further in the business cycle. And I I don't know. Maybe in the future it will be different. Maybe we'll just focus on one product and that will be it. But I just for now I don't see what this it is.
Yeah. Do you see any of your colleagues transfer learnings from how you work on the products into how you work on the agency side of the business? Like, are you using ShapeUp there as well, or principles from ShapeUp?
uh, I actually don't have a very good overview over the other projects. I prefer to be just focused on what we do internally. I know some people are using it. I just I have to maybe find out more about like who, where, for what. One of the things is like we're very flexible, and also different projects have different needs. Like sometimes we start new ventures which require us to be kind of fast and iterate on very specifically for that type of project. Then we have some long-term commitments, like 4-year contracts with a company where we are building their big software. So we're in that regard, like we are very flexible. We have all kinds of different projects, and usually the team that's responsible for that project is the one responsible for also executing it and thinking how they should be working on it. And in that regard, all teams are very autonomous, and the team actually is the deciding unit of what they should be doing and how.
Interesting. Yeah, got it. Makes sense. I guess you have to also adapt sometimes to what the client to the ways the client wants you to work.
Yeah,
or needs you
sometimes
to work.
we augment like bigger teams, and we just have to work the way they do. So yeah, we're kind of forced into that environment in a way.
So if I summarize the way that you work, would you say you're still very close to the book, kind of the shaping, betting, and building?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, except like a few differences we mentioned. Something I've also used, like tried to do, is like when I read an interesting book, I just pick the parts I like from it. Like for me, it's very strange to criticize the whole book by uh, criticizing one thing, for example. Like, okay, if you don't like this one thing, pick the 99 other things you like and just use those. So I also don't see how a methodology can be followed exactly, or should be followed exactly. Like it's the team is the one that has to fit the glove on top of on top of the hand, not the other way around. So
Yeah.
yeah, we're using it that way now. Maybe in the future it might change. We'll see. Like one thing I'm pretty sure we might change is like we'll be more like we would definitely have like more structured cycles. For example, like I see with bigger team that's it's in a way a necessity. It's like if you're a small team, yeah, you can compare a small team to a rabbit, or a big team with an elephant. Like it's just different types of physicality. Like you cannot jump so easily if you're bigger. So yeah, we're just giving it some structure on like how much time is a cycle is probably better. But when you're like, I don't know, 5-member team, it's like almost useless in that regard.
Is there anything that's bugging you right now about the way you work, or would you say we've settled?
I mean, we just had an incident like yesterday, and we just had before this call we were in a retrospection kind of call to see why it happened, like what to do about it, lessons learned, that kind of thing. I wouldn't say something is bugging me. I would like us to be also more focused in a way, but it's kind of also impossible in the current stage of the company. So even though my desire is to be like, yeah, I have full focus, full, steam on, I just don't see, how this is possible right now. Like we are slowly going that direction, but it's just a slow process. Like we don't have external funding. If we had, we'll be probably faster, but we also don't want to. So you have to be clear about like what kind of business you want to build. In that regard, we're very independent. We don't answer to investors, and yeah, it's just more calm way, I would say, to work.
I got it. But then it also means that you do get pulled away on agency work that drives the revenue, right?
Yes, exactly.
Or that drives short-term revenue that you need to stay afloat in a way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Is there anything, maybe any friction that you experience where you'd say, if I could go back and if I knew now what I didn't know then, based on what I know now, I would do it differently than we handled it?
Yeah, I mean, one thing is it's very small, but like initially, I tried to do shaping in the team because I kind of have both technical art background. I've run business before. Even though I kind of had all the skills necessary, it was still not enough. Like
Mm-hmm.
I remember I shaped some features which were like, oh, but that's actually not possible to implement it in this way because of like the way, I don't know, something on the backend works, which is like deep code buried somewhere, like which I have no idea
Yeah.
about. So it's not that you cannot do it alone and then ask for feedback. I just think it's just way easier to involve the whole team, and as we discussed, more pleasant. And yeah, I'll just straight out try it this way instead of like trying um to go the solo type of shaping work.
Basically, your learning was, even though you might feel like you have the competency, the skills to do it,
Mm,
it's still beneficial to have this be a collaborative exercise,
I
an
think so. Yeah.
activity.
Yeah.
In the very beginning, you mentioned that you use OKRs and you kind of laughed it off a bit. How do you see OKRs play along with ShapeUp
Yeah. I mean, it's
and
just
with the delivery you do?
yeah, I see so many people hate it, and I know why they hate it, because they've probably used it in some very corporate type of setting where, yeah, it just wasn't used correctly, I feel. I mean, OKRs are nothing really. They're just a way for us to say with words what our priorities are and kind of measure them, like how far we
Hmm.
are in the progress. Um, I
Would
mean,
you be in a position to
yeah,
make it like really concrete on what are your OKRs right now and how are you building towards them?
yeah, sure. I mean, the we have one because we, yeah, that's another thing which I've seen teams do. Um, I don't know why, like they set too many and it just never works.
Yeah.
Uh, the only objective right now is for the project to be sustainable. So that means covering everybody's salaries on the project. And yeah, we're measuring by, measuring revenue, monthly active users, and a few other, SaaS metrics you can think of that will tell us are we closer to that or not. And this has been our, we don't actually change it. We just I think we've stayed with that OKR for the last few quarters, and yeah, until we go there and make it like fully covering our salaries, which, as I said, is like almost there. Then we will probably
Hmm.
think about something else as a priority. But for now, that's the focus. Like, why should
Hmm.
we even think about anything else? Like, that's the main thing a business should be thinking at the beginning.
So in the discussions about what to build next, do you reflect on, if we build this, we believe this is going to push us or increase revenue by X, or
Yeah, in a way, like everything we build is like also tied to that. Like, is it something that will actually help us? Now, in the case of that feature I mentioned, which is probably the opposite,
the
we still,
fairness feature?
yes, we still believe like that's something that in the long term will bring us closer to a more profitable business. Um, so we don't want to rush it. Like, I mean, it's very easy to actually do stuff that will make it profitable for the next month, and then people will be angry with us. Like, I I just don't think that's a good way to run a business. Like, you have to be thinking
Yeah.
long term in that regard. So yeah, every time we're like building something, it's also tied to is it going to make our customers happier? Are they going to like this addition more? Like it's all about making someone's life easier in a way. So it comes from that.
In the spirit of time, I think we've covered a lot of ground. What are you looking forward to in the future on Assista, or getting started on other projects?
Yeah, so on Assista, we just want to finish up some important features this quarter, ship them, and also as products as a whole in Camplight, we're looking into few other opportunities, like something is baking, I would say, which is a little bit bigger than this project. So we'll see how that goes. Like we have to, again, approach it carefully as we are funding it ourselves. And yeah, how can we, if we are to make it a product, like how can it be also sustainable? So that's what I'm looking for maybe this year, to test this and think about some other products we're building.
Cool. If people feel kind of inspired by your story or can relate to it, what's a good way to reach out to you to maybe learn from you directly?
So they can they can reach me personally on Twitter. Probably I'm active there. If they just search my name, they'll find me. Also, they can write.
I can attest to that.
Yeah, that's where we met. And they can also write to either team@camplight.com or marin@camplight.com. Sorry, camplight.net. I'm terrible at domain names. And yeah, they can reach me there if they want to.
Cool. Yeah, I'll just add a link to your Twitter profile in the show notes, maybe, so people can find you there.
Sure.
And reach out. Cool. Thank you so much for your time. It was really cool to hear your story. I love the collective idea and kind of business model that you all have at Camplight.
Thanks, David. Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thanks for listening.
There you have it. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Marin. If you like this show, please leave us a review or spread the word. And to find jobs at companies that work with ShapeUp, like Camplight, remember to check out our job board at shapers.builders. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a great day.